Hello and welcome to this online training module on foundational education leadership for early childhood care and education. Henceforth, we will use the acronyms FEL for foundational education leadership and ECC for early childhood care and education. First of all, let us ask this question. Why this training program? Evidences from neuroscience shows and draft Indian National Education Policy recognizes that 85% of the cumulative brain development in human beings occurs prior to the age of 6 years. In this vein, the importance of preschools, that is ages 3 to 6 years, cannot be undermined. Moreover, till 8 years of age, children do not adapt to prescriptive learning. This is the reason why draft NEP clubs the education from 3 to 8 years, that is preschools and grades 1 and 2, into a single pedagogical unit called the foundational stage. It recommends flexible, multifaceted, multi-level, play-based, activity-based and discovery-based education for the children of age group 3 to 8 years. While the Anganwadis have performed well on the care part, the education part has been lacking. Alternatively, the private preschools in urban settings have been more a downward extension of the primary schools, thus developing foundational curricular and pedagogical framework, and more importantly, harnessing the role of teachers and preparing foundational education leadership becomes very critical in this regard. This online training module aimed at existing and potential teacher leaders provides them with the tools to lead this change in this era of technology and information as well as resource deluge on the web. In the post-COVID era, we must understand that parents are also deliberating of educating their preschoolers at home. This training programs thus becomes relevant for parents of children in the age group of 3 to 8 years as well. Next, let us answer this in brief, that what is in there in this training program on offer. This training program acquaints its participants with the following. Number one, purpose and strategy of education in general and the foundational stage in particular. Second one, a designed curriculum and suggested pedagogical approach based on Harvard Gardner's multiple intelligence framework. Number three, a curated set of open access and paid resources available on the web. And number four, access to expert consultation on what is appropriate for their child, especially for the parent participants. Now let us ask for whom this program is meant for. This training program is meant for the following set of foundational education stakeholders, both in the government as well as private domain and sectors. Number one, parent of children aging 3 to 8 years old. Number two, preschool edupreneurs and teachers. Number three, Anganwadi workers. Number four, preschool educators under Integrated Child Development Scheme, that is ICDS. And number five, grade 1 and grade 2 primary school teachers. I will be your trainer for this module. I am Rajiv Ranjan. I am an assistant professor in School of Development Studies at IIHMR University, Jaipur. My professional training includes an FPM equivalent to PhD in Public Policy from Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, and Bachelor of Technology in Electronics and Communication Engineering from QSAT Kochi. My research expertise and interest lie in the field of public policies related to health and education, impact evaluation studies, and child development. I have presented papers from my dissertation titled Self-Initiated Teacher Innovations in Government Rural Elementary Schools, Evolution, Impact and Sustainability at prestigious peer-reviewed forums of Australian Association for Research in Education and Australia and New Zealand Academy of Management. This has brought me appreciation from education research communities like British Educational Research Association (BERA) and educational researchers from Norway and Sweden, who foresee a great potential in policy implications of my thesis. I have also worked in team at IIM Ahmedabad, which framed the monitoring and evaluation framework of Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana (PMGSY). a project of Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India. I have several peer-reviewed publications and conference presentations. I have served as a reviewer to Journal of Teacher Education, International Journal of Emerging Markets, North American Case Research Association, NACRA. I am World Management Conferences, etc. I am also a Social Hero Awardee by International Institutional Organization and co-author of a non-fiction genre on die-hard entrepreneurship, that is Small Big Bang. So let us move forward and understand what this training program is all about. What are the details of this training program? Now let us see how this training program is organized. The total program duration, as you can see, is of 11 hours, which consists of 5 hours of video lecture sessions, 2 hours of online interaction at the end of the module, 2 hours of prescribed readings and 2 hours of assignments. It is expected to be completed over 2 weeks, the details of which will be discussed in a meanwhile. It is worthwhile to note that the training program also contains online direct sessions of 2 hours. This will be conducted on the fourth Saturday of every month. Say for example, in July it will happen on 25th July 2020 from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. for the participants who have completed all other components of the program, that is the content suggested to be completed in week 1 and 2 respectively. This is to resolve any unanswered and pressing queries of the participants of the training program, as well as to provide verbal feedback on any assignment if solicited, although written feedback on assignments will be provided to all the participants upon completion of the assignments. Now coming to the details of how it is suggested to pursue this online training. The online training should be pursued spanning over 2 weeks in the sequence in which it is available on the platform. Week 1 focuses on foundational education, leadership, purpose and strategy, while week 2 focuses on designing and curating TPAC for foundational education. By TPAC we mean a combination of technology, pedagogical approach, curriculum and knowledge. In week 1, which takes a total of 5 hours to complete, which includes 6 videos of 3 hours and 4 readings of 1 hour and 1 assignment of 1 hour. So it is like that. And week 2, which takes 4 hours to complete with 4 videos of 2 hours and 3 readings of 1 hour and 2 assignment of 1 hour. We will discuss the details in a little while. So if you look at the details of week 1, so week 1 video 1 will be talking, which we are going through right now, is regarding welcome to the training module and introduction to education leadership. Then week 1 video 2 will outline the Harvard Gardner's multiple intelligence framework and compare it with the general intelligence theory. Week 1 video 3 will talk about a life cycle approach to education, and week 1 video 4 will talk about understanding the stages and importantly the stage of nurturing, how a novice turns into a master, and importantly it will also emphasize on the 10,000 hour rule of how a novice turns into a master and how a 10,000 hour of training is required for that kind of a expertise gain in any and every field. Then week 1 video 5 will be understanding the purpose of foundational education stage, and week 1 video 6 will be foundational education stage strategy for identifying and nurturing specific intelligences. So these will be the content of videos of week 1. There will be 6 videos which will be talking about the strategies of foundational education, leadership and education in general as well in the beginning. So that is the emphasis of week 1. While in week 2 we will be going in more detail, and in week 2 if we look at the videos, will be discussing more about week 2 video 1 discusses about a curriculum for foundational education stage. We will be discussing about in video 2 week 2 it will be discussing about pedagogies of exposure and identification at the foundational stage. Week 2 video 3 discusses about delimiting technology use and nurturing the other intelligences. And week 2 video 4 designing a blueprint for the foundational education stage. So week 2 will be specifically emphasizing on the pedagogical, technological, so the TPAC for the foundational stage and a blueprint for the foundational stage. So that will be the emphasis of the week 2. Now coming to the readings. So if you look at the readings of week 1, it will be more of a theoretical kind of readings, like readings will be on Harvard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence, educational and practice implications of theory of multiple intelligence, about successful school leadership and educational leadership, and book review of a very important book of One Size Does Not Fit All, a student's assessment of schools by Nikhil Goyal, a very important book by a student, Nikhil Goyal, who had written it when he was 17-year-old. So that is the content regarding readings of week 1. If you look at the readings of week 2, it is more focused again on the curriculum, pedagogical and technological aspects of foundational education stream. So the first reading of week 2 will be on curriculum for foundational education stage. The second reading will be on pedagogies of exposure and identification at the foundational education stage, and the third reading will be on technology use and avoidance at the foundational education stage. Now coming to the assignments. So if you look at the assignment for week 1, it is a written exercise on education strategy in general and at foundational stage in particular. So after some discussion has already taken place, the instructor would want the participants to write their own strategy, how they see their strategy regarding education in general and foundational stage in particular. That is very important in design and design of uh, curriculum, pedagogy, etc. at various stages, and emergence of the trainees as educational leaders. And in the second week, the assignments will be more focused on curriculum design challenge and pedagogy adoption challenge for the various stages, and particularly for the foundational education stage. We have already discussed the guidelines regarding conduct of online interaction for the module. So these are this is the training program overview. Now coming to the formal beginning of the module. So let us start this module by two very important quotes. One regarding, so the training program is on education leadership. So let us understand education and leadership through two very important quotes, and let me quote on education that no educative process is ever the end. It is always the beginning of more education, more learning and more living. And regarding leadership, let me quote that leaders do not create followers, they create more leaders. So let me interpret for you these two quotes by Tom Peters on leadership, and the quote on education I read in Norman Lewis's book on What Power Made Easy. So these two let me interpret for you. So one of the very important, so let us first understand what is education leadership then. One of my very successful seniors during my school days used to tell that I do not need a scholar, I need a teacher. Let us decipher this statement by a prolific student in greater detail and connect the dots by relating it to the two quotes on education and leadership respectively. It seems that the job of an educator is neither to showcase nor to possess the highest form of knowledge or skill, but the ability to empathize and understand what the child, student or pupil wants to pursue, and then act as a bridge and the facilitator in nurturing of expertise of the student in particular skill or knowledge. Fostering right attitude and habits is primordial to development of expertise in any domain. Thus, a true teacher or an educational leader is one who is able to help a student become a master in the domain in which he has passion, interest or inclination. It all starts with exposing the student with the vast plethora of possibilities and opportunities that are available to him or her. Then helping him or her identify what he or she is interested in and good at is the next step, and the final step being able to develop the right attitude and habits required to nurture the skill sets from being a novice in a certain domain that is identified to obtain mastery in that field. Thus, let us understand what the characteristic of a great teacher or an educational leader are. So let us move now to understanding the facets or characteristic of a great educational leader, because you all envisage to be or want to be a great educational leader, so you must understand that what are the facets you need to possess or what are the qualities you need to possess as an educational leader. So an educational leader must possess the following six characteristics at the very least. He should not be a specialist but a generalist. That is the first characteristic, because being specialized is not very important. Being generalist, and at that too at the foundational stage, it becomes all the more important, because you have to not only nurture some specific intelligence, but you have to help the person identify, and before that also expose him to the various possibilities that are there. Then experiences of failing is another very important facet of a foundational education leader in general, and of any educational leader in any educational leader for that matter. So that is another so if you don't fail, you are not you will not be able to understand what are the reasons why people fail, and there will be failures in life, so how to overcome that and then win. So that is the kind of thing you have to understand. Then empathy is another aspect, and empathy, why empathy is required? Because you need to expose people, identify and nurture, because different people will have different kinds of intelligence, so you need to possess a certain kind of empathy. Then another aspect is ability to understand, design and deliver delta CAS. By CAS we mean knowledge, attitude, skills and habit, and there is a certain process orientation to it and a certain sequentiality to it. We will discuss that in greater detail a little later. That process orientation is also very important, because it is all about a process. Once you are in a process of doing something, everything starts falling in place. So the most important aspect of being an educational leader or being a successful personal in any field is being a process oriented person. So it is not the skill which differentiate, but the way you conduct yourself, your attitude, your habits, that is what differentiates people at the top, who are at the top and who are the best from other people who are in that domain and are struggling to reach the top. Then solicitousness is another aspect of it, and it is very important for an educational leader, because he needs to nurture certain kinds of skills, certain kinds of habits, certain kinds of interests in people, and which can be different from his or her own skills or habits or expertise levels. So that is why this kind of a solicitousness is very important. So let us understand each one of them in greater detail one by one. Firstly, an education leader must be one who has experience in broadening the furrows and not only deepening them. By that I mean to say that an education leader must have a broader understanding of fields, because one of the key facilitations he is going to provide, that is you all as future education leaders are going to provide, is with regards to helping the students identify his or her path, wherein his or her interest, inclination and passion lies. So a generalist orientation and knowledge of the career opportunities and education pathways is an important facet of an education leader. Secondly, we must remember that failures are not only stepping stones to success but a key ingredient of any career pathway or journey, whether be successful or unsuccessful based on worldly parameters. This is a very important feature and characteristic every education leader must possess, that is experiences of having failed in life before tasting success, if at all. I will go on to say to the extent that those people who just fail to reach the pinnacle of success are the best candidates for education leadership. This is because they not only know that what it takes to reach the top, having observed from close quarters, but they also know what prohibits and separates the best from the rest, what it takes to beat the second to reach the first and foremost position. So this is very important facet of an educational leader, to be a failure and understand what failure means and what differentiate a failure from a successful person. Third and sixth, that is empathy and being solicitous, are very related points. One need to be empathetic to his or her students and pupils. That is because one has to not only train a child as an educational leader in whatever one is good at, by treating them as empty vessels and falling trap to the manifestations of general intelligence theory in the real world. One must first recognize the fact that there are multiple intelligences and fruitful and gainful careers can be carved out of each one of them. More discussion on this will happen in the later lectures. Nurturing is only the last stage. The first and second steps, which is often forgotten, is the exposure and identification stages. We will understand this in greater detail in future sessions. Thus, empathy becomes a very important skill, facet, and characteristic of a great education leader, because if the path identified is wrong, nothing much can be done afterwards. A related facet is being solicitous, one who is open to ideas and is ready to provide guidance and support irrespective of expertise, just based on an understanding of interest, inclination, and passion of child, can turn out to be a very powerful and nurturing education leader, because he understands education is not about covering but uncovering the vast plethora that is out there. It is up to the student to choose, and teacher or education leader has to play the role of a facilitator in this regard. Fifth, that is being process oriented, is another very important characteristic of an education leader. Education in general and for any field is nothing but a process, and habits and attitudes play a very important role in this. An education leader must be able to nurture to his or her pupil an ability to follow the process, because after a point success is byproduct not of skills or knowledge but habits and attitude. An education leader must understand this and accordingly train his people who become process-oriented individuals. The 10,000 hour rule, which applies to the mastery in any domain, is nothing but a process parameter, and skills and knowledge are just byproduct of that. Fourth, discussing last but by no way the least, is a very important facet of an educational leader, like you, who needs to understand the sequentiality of delta CAS acronym for knowledge, attitude, skills and habit, wherein attitude is followed by habit and knowledge and skills are determined by these two more important facets to be developed by any pupil or student. So these are the 6 facets any education leader must. The next question that needs deliberation, and you all must be thinking, who must be an education leader? In my view, parents, especially mothers, who also call the first teacher for children, have to take a lead role in this field of education, more so at the foundational stage. The role of mothers and fathers becomes all the more important. It has become an imperative in the post-COVID era, where parents are deliberating how to educate their preschoolers and toddlers at home. If homeschooling becomes a norm in the society, parents as education leaders have to rise to the occasion. If not, then also they, being one of the most important stakeholders in child's education, they must acquaint themselves and train as education leaders. Teachers are second most important category after parents, who have to take an education leadership role. As discussed earlier, teachers must possess at least 6 facets or characteristics deliberated and described in the last slide. Their role become more important for first generation learners in the and also outside the system, whose parents are not capable to play this role. Edupreneurs are another important stakeholder who build and operate education systems. They possess an education leadership as a very important trait in their personality. Their being so is a determining factor in how education systems are run. And finally, I will go on to say that anybody who is interested in general in the development of the human race, nurturing innate talents and creativities to foster the human spirit, must be an education leader. So we must understand that education leadership is required for each and every individual, because each and every individual is going to be one of these. At least he is going to be a parent, a mother or a father, or he is going to be a teacher to someone, or maybe a supportive adult. Because if you are interested in development of the human race, development of the creativities of people, this is the best way forward. Education is the best way forward, and education in a diverse sense, not in a very narrow sense. Because in a narrow sense, what happens, there will be some people who will become successful, but it will be constrained by the economic logic. So education, according to me, must not be constrained by the economic logic, but it must be facilitated to the extent that it must be emancipatory in nature, and it must foster the creativities of people, and it must lead to increase in creativity at the human scale. Moving further, I would like to say that uh, thank you for attending this lecture. In the next lecture, we will discuss and outline Harvard Gardner's multiple intelligence framework and compare it with general intelligence theory. As discussed earlier, and we will be discussing in greater detail later, this is the primary bottleneck facing education system in the current era. Always remember, it is not your blue blood, your pedigree or your college degree. It is what you do with your life that counts. And the best way to contribute towards the human race and humanity is to contribute to the education system. And educating a child is not a simple project. It is a multi-year project, and a multi-year project in the sense that it nurtures the creativity of children, and it leads to some kind of a development of the human race.